that's your ischial tuberosity. Okay, that's the bony part of your pelvis that makes contact with the surface. So I've just moved my cushion so I can feel the firm surface of my chair. You can actually feel that part of your pelvis. So the hamstrings attach, we say proximally, closer to the middle of the body, at that ischial tuberosity underneath your pelvis. And when they're tight, what's happening is that they're pulling on the pelvis. And what that is going to do is it's actually going to tilt the pelvis a little bit forward. It's going to prevent the pelvis from moving in its full free range of motion. It's going to have it tilted a bit forward. And what that's going to do, because everything is connected, the leg bone connected to the hip bone, etc. So what happens then is the low back is going to have an increased lordosis. You're going to have a bigger inward curve in your low back. So the pelvis goes into a tilted anterior or forward position with that tightness from the hamstrings. The low back has an increased lordosis, and what that does is it predisposes us to back injury, to low back injury, and it reduces our safe range of motion. So that means when we're moving around, when we're doing things, these lumbar vertebrae, this is a seat of back pain, huge problem in North America, to take one large area, huge problem, and in more developed countries generally, and we'll get into the reason why in a moment, but we've just got massive issues with low back pain, right? Very, very big problems. And I can tell you that the taller you are, the worse this phenomenon is as a general rule. And the reason for that is because of the leverage of longer limbs. Okay, so the longer you are, I'm almost 6'2", which isn't, it's fairly tall, but the longer you are, the more forces get generated by your limbs. And so taller people's joints break down faster generally, depending on what you do, and we get back pain. The taller you are, the more back pain you have. Okay. Now another factor is, so this is all we're talking about, hamstrings specifically and low back pain. Okay. Another factor is gender. Men tend to have more back pain than women, and why is that? Well, one of the reasons is that men tend to be less flexible than women. Women are just more flexible than men generally. Okay, so that's an advantage for the ladies. That's great. That's a nice thing that you have as a general rule, but of course, we're all individuals. So our situations are individual and we're working with our own situation, right? And none of us is perfect. And we're all dealing with, in fact, some difficulties. So I had major issues with my low back until I started really targeting my hamstrings and my hips some years ago. Okay, so that's a little personal anecdote about that. So that's why we've reviewed why the hamstrings are important for back health, okay? Why, when they're tight, they move the pelvis into a position that's not ideal. They increase low back tension. They increase lordosis of the spine, and that means that we don't have as much capability to move the spine safely. Now, I'm going to give you an example. One of the things that we tend to not be able to do is we tend to not be able to go into a crouch. This is not only related to hamstrings, but I want you to look at my low back here. When you go into a crouch, when you bend down or a squat, you should be able to have a flat back or a slight inward curve in your back. So as you go very low, it'll be flat. What you do not want is you don't want to go down like this. And a lot of people will do this, and I used to do this all the time until I got really serious about it when I was younger. Just come like this. It's easier. But what this is doing to your back and your vertebrae is putting a lot of pressure on the front aspect of your vertebrae, and there's problems that we won't get into that can come from that. So as a general rule, speaking of the back, we want to be able to come down, keep that back flat. Let's say we're going to pick up a box, and then they say lift with the legs and not with the back, right? You've all heard that. So that's all related to what we're talking about today. So let's move on. A little discussion of what the issues are with the hamstrings. And so with scoliosis in particular, why? You might say, well, why hamstrings for scoliosis, John? Well, with scoliosis, we're working with the spine, but the foundation for our movement is, of course, from the ground up. So feet and then hips and legs. So that's why opening up and improving flexibility of the hips and the hamstrings in particular, but all of the hips, but today we're looking at hamstrings, improving this flexibility is going to give us a nice base of safe range of motion to be able to focus in on the rest of our scoliosis spine. Okay, so for example, if you were doing a lot of good scoliosis work, but you had really big asymmetry and tightness in one side of your hip, such that your weight, your gait, or the way you always habitually stood was lopsided and significantly asymmetrical, still, it's going to work against the good work you're doing in your back. Okay, so I hope that makes sense, that connection there, okay? Let me know if that doesn't. Always shoot your questions or pop your questions into the comment box on the side and we'll get to them. Okay, so let's look at principles of stretching. Okay, 3 general things: time, breath, and not too easy, not too hard. So a lot of times when we come into a stretch, what people do is as soon as you get into the stretch, I'm going to show you an example of the first one we're going to do. As soon as you come into the stretch, you just want to get out of it, right? We're humans. And if you're not used to this, you come into a stretch and immediately you feel some tension there and you say, well, that's enough, I'm done, it's uncomfortable. That's normal, okay? But you have to actually embrace the stretch. You need to spend time in the stretch. So let's go ahead into the first stretch that we're going to look at, and I'm going to bring these three guidelines in: breath, time, and not too easy, not too hard. So first thing I want to do is I want to give you guys some osteoporosis safe stretches. Now, I've worked with people with osteoporosis. Some of you have had clearance from your doctors to be able to do some bending and twisting, but as a very general rule, not knowing your situations personally, and perhaps with very significant osteoporosis and in a fragile state, you don't, as a general rule, no bending and no twisting. Okay, so just avoiding those things. So the first stretch we're going to look at is a very simple hinge on the chair. Okay, so this is one some of you have seen, you're familiar with. I've done this with some of you as well. So I'll just sit on this bench. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to turn this on a bit of an angle so you guys can see that a little better. So you come and you sit on your chair, and what you want to do is you want to be near the front of your chair. Okay? If you're near the back of your chair, watch this. I can't stretch my leg out. You see that? I can't get it straight because my thigh is actually being supported on the chair. So I want to bring my pelvis to the front of my chair or bench, and now I can straighten that leg because it's just my pelvis that's on. I'm going to show you this on the chair to make it a bit more understandable. And I can tell you that a lot of people, a number of people that I've worked with, are a little bit nervous about sitting like this on a chair, and they have the sense that they're going to fall off. So let's just take a moment to talk about this. When you're seated on the front edge of your chair, you're not going to fall off. It being a bit new, you might feel that way, but let's think about what we're doing. We are not coming past our pelvis. So you see my thighs stop here. My thighs are not on my chair, but my pelvis, my whole pelvis is on the chair. So for example, I'm going to show you what would result in me slipping off. Would be, don't worry, I won't actually, is I'm going to support my weight here. I'm going to start sliding forward. So now I'm coming past my sit bones, past the ischial tuberosity. I can actually feel it on the edge here. Now I've slid, now I'm just on my glute muscles. I'm literally just on my gluteal muscles. Okay, so I can slide. So now you're at risk of, sliding off your chair. But generally speaking, not generally speaking, specifically speaking, you should be able to get comfortable putting your pelvis on the front edge of a chair and being able to sit upright there, or relatively upright, you're not using your backrest, and feel stable, feet under the knees. Okay, so experiment with that. If you have any difficulties with that, try that out a bit on a chair or on a bench, and experiment with coming to the front of your chair. There's a whole other bunch of benefits posturally that happen here, but that's for another presentation. Okay, so back to our seated stretch. So first, easy stretch, okay, for osteoporosis, front edge of our chair, one leg out, okay, toe up to the ceiling, and we're simply going to hinge. So we're going to hinge here. We're going to keep that nice upright body. We're not going to bend our spine. We're not going to do flexion of the spine. We're simply going to hinge at the waist. And lo and behold, it does not take long before you will feel that quite intense stretch in your hamstring. So, are you guys trying this? Don't stop it to write in the chat, but hopefully you're trying this, okay? So get on your chair, get on your bench, and give this a try. I think I'm going to actually switch to my chair, okay, because you'll see me a little better. I'm going to move this back. This is my trusty, simple wooden chair, flat surface, doesn't slope back. Okay, so here we are. Okay, same idea. So let's do it, guys. Let's do it, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to count for you guys 30 seconds or so, and you're going to see how long 30 seconds is when you're not doing anything and you're just stretching, how long it seems. Okay, so here we are. One leg forward, and then I'm going to start moving a little bit more quickly to get through our stretches. And I want to encourage you guys to review this video later, take a couple notes on the stretches you like, get back to me with any questions you have, and try these out. Okay, so here we go. Nice and easy. Okay, sitting up tall, tilting forward, hinging forward. Okay, we're not folding, just hinging, and getting that lovely stretch. And now we're going to get this going here for 30 seconds. Now, once you have the stretch, let's come back to our 3 principles. Once you have the intensity of the stretch, one of your litmus tests is that you should still be able to breathe freely and thoroughly. So, if I go really intense, it's hard for me to breathe. It's hard for me to inhale deeply, right? It's a bit too much. You can try that. You'll notice that. So if it's too intense, I can't breathe deeply. So I'm going to back off a little bit. Okay, now it's intense enough. So breathing in through the nose, and then I would like you to breathe out through your mouth. So this is a particular kind of breathing called stretch reflex release breathing, or myotatic reflex release breathing. Big fancy term. And what we're doing with that, breathing in through the nose. Oh, look at that, we've come to almost a minute. Excuse me, I said 30 seconds and we stayed for a minute. Okay, that's what I get for all my yapping. Okay, let's go to the other leg. Okay, so now a minute is good. Okay, so let's come to the other leg here. A minute is a lovely stretch. 30 seconds is a minimum, I would say. A minute is great. Sometimes people will even do, in a yin yoga type style, they'll even do 3, 4, 5, 6 minutes of holding a stretch and relaxing into it. Okay, so here we go. Other side. Breathing in through the nose, deep. Trying to do an abdominal breath if you can. Trying to bring it right to the abdomen. Breathing out through the mouth. Nice and slow. Finding the intensity, not too intense, but intense enough. And then time. So waiting here. Let's just do 30 seconds for, actually we should do a minute, because we did a minute for the other side. So just relax here. So this is a very simple stretch. This might be too simple for most of you, for some of you guys. I shouldn't say too simple. This might be a little bit not as interesting, but I'll tell you what, this is a great resource. So for those of you, someone specifically asked me for options for osteoporosis, and I don't know your specific situation. Okay, so this is a nice one. Okay, so the thing about this is, even if you can do some of the other stretches I'm going to show you in a minute, this is a great stretch for the office or for at home. You know, you can do this on the front of your couch even if you're sunk back in your couch, you can come up to the front edge of the couch, because on the front edge there's that nice support, right? The frame of the couch. So you can always perch on the front edge of a couch, even if the middle of it just sinks you right in. Okay, so you perch here, you take a bit of time here. We're coming up on a minute, another 10 seconds. You're breathing, you're holding, and you're relaxing. Now, another important issue that comes up is right here is the difference between the two sides of the body. So if you're right-handed, typically your left side is more tense, and you really notice it. You'll get into the stretch and you'll just want to leave right away. You'll just think, you'll sit in there and go, you'll do it for a couple seconds and you'll leave it. And I've seen many, many, many people do that. It's normal, right? It's just normal. But if you want to get the benefits of the stretch, you've got to come back in there. All right, we've gone over a minute. Okay, you've got to come in there and you need to just spend some time in there, breathing into the stretch, relaxing, letting that stretch just be there, just staying in the intensity of that stretch. Not too easy, not too hard. Okay, let's move on. Another one, safe for osteoporosis, without bending or stretching, is on the back with a strap. Now, this stretch, I have to say, there's the issue of getting down to the ground. Okay, so this might be an issue for you if coming down to the ground is an issue, but I'm going to give it as an option anyway. And I want you to know that you don't need a strap. You can just as easily use a belt or a towel. Okay, just works just as well. You don't need a specific fancy strap. Okay, now actually I'm going to show you this sideways. Let me know if you have any questions about the stretches. Drop them in the chat. Okay. So, on your back, taking your time to come down. On your back, we're going to go ahead, just bring up one leg, get our foot in there. If you actually have a fancy kind of strap with a foot thing, you can put your foot in there. But like I said, you don't need a fancy strap to do this. You can start with whatever you have. Okay, so wrapping it up. Now there's a couple ways you can do this. So you can keep this knee bent, and this will make it a little bit easier. And then you've got a flat back, you're not bending, you're not twisting, you're gonna bring that leg up, and then you're just gonna let the weight of your arms pull on it. Perhaps you're gonna push through your heel and straighten your knee for a more intense stretch. Perhaps you're gonna pull a little harder than just the weight of your arms, and perhaps you're gonna really bring it a little more forward. All of that is up to you, and you're gonna experiment to see what feels doable for you. Okay, the next way to do it is that we drop this leg, this other knee, and we bring it down. And what that's going to do is it's going to accentuate our stretch a little bit here by widening the range of motion between our two legs. And it also might involve the hip flexors on that other leg. You might start feeling this area stretching a bit too. Now that's great. If you like it, you can get a twofer, as we say, 2 for 1. Okay? Or, if that's a bit too much for you, go ahead and put that foot up. Okay, so we're going to go to the other side now. And I'm going to do it a little bit less long. I just wanted you to feel what 30 seconds, but then it turned into a minute, feels like. But here the purpose is just to show you these options, and you'll have this, you can review this, and you can take a note on these options. So this is a lovely one because you don't have to do anything here. I mean, you're really just lying on your back. I can almost just let the weight of my arms go here. Okay, and again, I'm going to bring that one down. Now, I am actually left-handed, which means that my left leg is more flexible than my right. Now, that's not true in every case. I said that general rule before about right versus left. And most people, 90% of people are right-handed. Something about like 90%. So that's most of you. Okay, but I'm lefty, so my right leg is actually my tense leg. This leg here is my tense leg for me. So I have less range of motion here, and this is the one that I focus on more. And if you're working with me, always remember that I'm here for you guys to work with your specific situation. And if you're working with me, we're going to put more TLC into your tense side. And in fact, it's not only going to be your hamstrings, it's going to be a number of things related to your hip, which are going to be more tense, more asymmetrical, and weaker on your less dominant side, typically. Okay, sometimes people don't always follow that pattern. Okay, so those are some nice options that are osteoporosis safe. Let's go on with some more intense options here. Remember to get your questions in there. If you've got them, go right ahead. So, someone said, when you say taller, is it possible that I'm shrinking? So, real quick, I happen to be quite tall. As I said, that's sort of my situation. And conversely, which in a sense is a disadvantage, as I said, in some ways. And conversely, if you're shorter, that's an advantage in the opposite ways, that it's a disadvantage to be tall. However, as you age, yes, you do actually lose a little bit of height, but it tends to be very gradual. It can also be related to compression of the spine, of the vertebrae, etc. So there is a phenomenon of losing height with degeneration of the spine and or age. It's natural with age. Unfortunately, it happens with degeneration as well. That being said, it's not usually very much, right? And it doesn't usually happen very quickly. So I wouldn't say that that's going to be a very acute thing that you're going to perceive that suddenly you're much shorter, okay? So let's go ahead now and continue with this one here. Okay. So, all right. Just taking a look at my notes here. Okay, so this is what I want to do with you guys. Elevated forward lean. Okay, so this also could be fine for osteoporosis. However, there's a balance component, so I'm going to invite you to be very careful. Okay, so again, without folding, without flexion of the spine, we're simply going to put a foot up on a surface. So any surface you want, elevated surface. Some of you are flexible enough to go quite a bit higher. Get it on a table or something like that. Whoops, that's not good. Right? Get it on something high. It doesn't really matter. Okay, it could be very low. Okay, you could even do this standing. Okay, so you could even just put your leg out straight, bend your opposite knee, and hinge. Hips back, hinge forward. So this is a legitimate way to do this. But, so that's another option. Okay, here we go. Elevated. Up here, make sure you're stable. Hinge at the waist. Boom, target that hamstring. Other side. Same deal, except for, as I mentioned to you, this is my tighter side. So I always feel tighter on this side. Okay, so working with asymmetry, remember with scoliosis and with asymmetry, we're looking to improve over time, and we'll get improvements. I have vast improvements, but there isn't a cure per se. We're not going to suddenly, or even over time, get ourselves to a perfected state vis-a-vis our asymmetry. Rather, we're going to strengthen, increase in flexibility, improve range of motion, improve asymmetry, and really make great gains, but don't have the expectation that, oh, you know, I'm always more tense on one side. I wish it wouldn't be that way. It's going to be that way. Okay? Just accept it. It's all right. Okay? That's just the way it is. Everyone is asymmetrical. Hardly any humans are perfectly symmetrical. And with scoliosis, it's so much more the case. Okay? So that's take a breath. And just part of working with your scoliosis, a big part of working with your scoliosis is, on the one hand, accepting that it's like an investment. It's just a few quarters in the piggy bank. You know, it grows over time. It's not fast, but you start to make gains. Okay, but you're accepting that there's a time component here. And the other side is not settling. Okay, so you're accepting the situation you are, and then on this very same other side of the coin, by the same token, you're saying, I'm going to improve it. Okay, so forward lean, strap on back, and now I want to come to the seated forward, what did I have here? Seated single leg extension. Right, we did that one. Seated forward fold. So before we were saying no bending. So this is an interesting topic too. There are sort of two schools. There's sort of purists who say you should never flex your spine, which means you should never do this. This is flexion of the spine, right? A forward, this is flexion, okay? So, and this is extension when you're going back with your spine. So there's purists who say when you're stretching your hamstrings, don't ever fold. Just leave that back straight. Nothing wrong with that. Lovely. And in fact, that's, you know, a very kind of strict, appropriate, nothing wrong with that. It's lovely. However, the spine does have flexion capabilities, and as long as you're not worried about flexion, as long as you have some nice range of motion with your spine, flexion, extension, we can work with that. And remember, we want to increase your range of motion and your functional and safe range of motion, right? We're trying to get you to be able to move your spine, right? Not move it, right? So that being said, everyone's different. So if you can do flexion, then we're going to go ahead and do some flexion. So the seated forward fold. So before we did this is as simple as you think, if you've already guessed it. Before we did this without folding, now we're simply going to fold. So now you can just come down, flexion, rest down there. Okay? I ask people to keep their knees straight so you're not quote unquote cheating, because look, sometimes people will do this. They'll bend their knee and they'll say, wow, you know, oh, I can touch my toe, you know? It doesn't really matter if you can touch your toe or not. Sure, it's great, but it doesn't matter. We are where we are. What matters is that we get the stretch that works for us. So don't bend that knee. Come forward. Now you're allowed to get that forward flexion, and you can come down. You can even rest yourself on that other knee, for example, like this. Okay? So this is another option if flexion is not a problem for you. And then we want to get down on the mat at long last. So seated single leg extension. So for those of you who are doing yoga, those of you who are comfortable getting on a mat, okay, you get right down on the mat, and one leg in, one leg out, and you're going to go ahead, and you can do this also. You can fold from the waist without forward flexion, or you can go ahead and just flex your spine and lay down there. Just, you know, you can grab your foot, you can put a towel here, you can put a strap if you want. Okay, so if the flexion is uncomfortable, sometimes people are uncomfortable just flexing, not because of their spine, but because they're squishing their tummy. Fine, okay? Accept where you are, embrace your body with compassion, and then give it that TLC. Give it that little bit of love. Okay, so here's one nice, lovely option that I like if you're feeling good about sitting. Why do we have this wonderful block right here? That's for in case you want a bit more height. So maybe you sit down on the mat and you say, you know what? It's not working, John. I can't even get forward. A lot of people will sit down and they're just like this. You can't even, right? You're too tense. Okay, fine. We take you where you are and we make you better, right? That's what we're doing here. So sit on your yoga block. My bottom's almost too big to fit on one. Okay, and now you've got some elevated height, and now that much easier. Okay, so I'll show you that from the side. Okay, so height, elevation. Okay, those of you who've done any of the simple yoga postures with me know that elevation is a key component. Okay, so makes it that much easier. Okay, other leg, same idea, except for expect one to be more tense. Okay, now we have double leg forward fold seated. So both legs forward, big breath in, and breathing out, all the way down. Again, it doesn't matter if you touch your feet. I'm just coming to my feet. That's what I tend to do. I don't want to see you bend your knees. Okay, I can't see you at all, so lucky you. I won't give you any heck. So knees straight, and then again here, it's actually hard to come forward. It's a bit hard to come forward. I'm fairly flexible, but I'm not super flexible. Okay, some people can just fold right down, right? So I can come down all right, but I remember when I needed something beneath my hips all the time. So don't worry, don't feel shy if you want something beneath your hips. Go right ahead. Okay, so both legs together, you will feel the difference between the legs. You will really feel which one is tighter. Okay, you will be unavoidable to feel that. Okay, let's finish with some standing techniques to finalize our selection of hamstring stretches for today. So, 2 more. So the standing forward fold. Okay, so classic. I love this one. Number of things I love about this. It is, but keep in mind it's a forward flexion of the spine. So if you have osteoporosis, you should be cleared to be able to do this kind of movement. Otherwise, you should avoid it. Okay, so we're just going to fold forward. So let's put our feet facing straight forward, okay, as opposed to the normal outward angle. Straight forward on 2 railroad tracks. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead about hip or shoulder width apart. And I'll tell you what, you can play with this. You can have your feet together, but it's very hard to balance when you do this. Be careful. Okay, a little more apart, a little wider apart, right? There's different ways you can do this. People come down here. Okay, there's different ways to do this. Play with what gives you a good hamstring stretch. So let's breathe in. You don't have to do it like this, but it's nice to. Breathe in. And then as we exhale, we're going to come down, tucking our chin vertebrae by vertebrae. Weight of the arms helps pull us down. And now when we're down here, there's a couple things I want you to be aware of. Okay, when you're down here, general rule, you can keep those knees soft. Okay, so keeping them soft, what that does is it removes pressure from the lower back in case your lower back is sensitive. You don't want to be going into a stretch if you're experiencing pain as a general rule. We know we're going to experience some slight discomfort in the area we're stretching, but it shouldn't be that intense. And we certainly don't want any other pain. Okay, so you may have, that being said, you may feel like your lower back is stretching. That could be very good. Okay, but generally speaking, you want to save your lower back from pressure, or you're worried, bend in the knees. You're not worried, go ahead, straighten those knees if you feel good, and relax down. So that's the first thing to be aware of, is what you're doing with your knees. Okay, so always safe to have the knees bent. You can straighten them if you want a better stretch. Now, fold your hands if you want. You can grab your elbows and just let yourself hang here. So one of the things I love so much about this stretch is that you just hang out. Okay, so once you've got your elbows, so keep in mind, bringing your hands up from the ground. If you were touching the ground, bringing them up will increase the stretch, because now all the weight of your arms is acting on as the stretch. And let your head and neck fall. Do not try to lift your head and neck. Just let it fall. Now, why do I like this so much? Reason number 3, you don't, actually I've already said the same thing, you hang out here. You're just hanging out, okay? You just relax, you breathe, you can spend 2-3 minutes like this, okay? And you're just, the weight of gravity, or rather the weight of your body and gravity is just helping you get that lovely stretch. Now, when you come up from this move, to be safe, always bend those knees, drop those hips, and then see if you can straighten your back before you come up. So you could do a whole class on that movement. Okay, so if you have a sensitive back, but you feel good with the forward fold, make sure when you're coming up, this would be the same rule as if you were picking something up. If you're helping someone move something, your friend or your kid or your parent, or you're doing something around the house, this would be the same rule. Bending those knees, hips back, do not round the back. Okay, so if you want to save your back and you're coming up, Okay, let's say you were here. Okay, quick review. Bend in the knees, drop the hips, try to straighten the back, and then come up like that. Or at the very least, bend the knees, drop your hips a bit, and then gently come on up. Last stretch for today is a twist variation of the forward fold. Now, this can be wonderful. One of the other things that tends to get tense is with scoliosis is the IT band. Okay, so that's a band of tendinous fascia on the side that runs along the side of your thighs, and it's often very tense. And you'll find out if you do this. Okay, and so it's typically going to be tense on your non-dominant side. So we'll start like this. And what we're going to do now, so this is more advanced. So do not try this if you have balance issues. Okay, I'm going to start turning around. We're going to turn both ways. Okay, but first I'm going to turn around. Okay, so I've done a little twist, and then I'm going to do my forward fold. Excuse me for facing that way. What I'll do is I'll start the other way for you guys. So let me start like this, and I'll come to see you. So I have to think about this. One way is easier than the other. Again, normal for scoliosis, okay, and something we want to improve. So I'm turning. I mean, one way is normal, easier than other for everyone, actually, typically. But it's, as I said before, it's more accentuated for scoliosis. So twist, and then down we go. So the back leg right now is getting a much accentuated hamstring stretch, and the side of that thigh, the IT band, is getting that stretch too. So if I were to go the other way, I'd come around this way. So you can experiment with this. Okay, twisting it around, and down you go. So that back leg, in this case my left leg, is getting a more intense stretch. Okay, so being careful, taking your time, don't rush, never throw yourself into a stretch, and never jerk yourself out of a stretch, or when you're in a stretch. Never make a jerking motion, and never use a lot of your power and strength when you're in a stretched position, because if you think about it, your muscles are elongated, and in a way they're a little bit fragile. So you want to be gentle with yourself in those positions. You come in, breathe, time, feel it relax a little bit, and then move on with your day, and watch those benefits add up. Watch yourself feel a little better, a little less low back pain if you have back pain, a little more movement, flexibility, and ease of movement as you're moving around. Okay? So all this stuff is gold. So we're going to finish up a couple more points. Look at the questions here. Excuse me. Have a sip of my coffee. So I have a question. Are these stretches good for a C curve? So it's a great question. So we're going to differentiate working specifically with a C curve or an S curve. And we're going to say, so when I work with your C curve, I work on your back specifically, but you'll say, but John, you said there's a connection, right? Yes, there's a connection. So, but the lovely thing is when you're working with your legs, whatever curve is in your back, whether it's C curve, S curve, reverse S curve, as long as you can do these types of movements, right? The selection that I gave you, as long as you can target your hamstrings, there's a sense in which your back is out of the equation for the moment. And the sense is that you're working on your hamstrings as separate from your back. Yes, there's a reciprocal effect. Yes, they're going to affect your back in the ways I said. They're going to improve your safe range of motion, and it's going to make it easier to target that lovely C curve. We're going to target that lovely spine, that precious spine. So it makes it easier to target it, but working on the legs is a little bit separate per se, so you can sort of differentiate that. So you can work on your legs like this, whatever curve profile you have, and that will help the work that we do that's specific to your curve profile. So I hope that answers your question. Let me know if that does or doesn't. And we're going to leave it at that if we don't have any more comments or questions. So a wonderful day to you all. I wish you all a wonderful day. Thank you for joining. It's been fun to talk with you. Make sure that you reach out. Let me know if you want any more help. Right now, we have a free membership in my membership portal. You can join for free for $0. It's like you have to purchase it, but I made it cost nothing for the trial membership. And you're welcome. And you get to come in my membership portal and take a look around at 12 unlocked posts to see if it looks like something you'd want to do with me. Okay, so there's no commitment. There's